Well, hello and welcome to the Secret to Success webinar. My name is Robertson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pikmonic, and I am joined today by Miss Leslie Jackson. Leslie, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
So before we dive into today's webinar, it would be fantastic if you could, well, actually, even before we do that, I'm going to step back. For all the participants joining today, on the bottom of the webinar, you will see a little chat widget. Feel free to click that at any point in time, ask questions. I will try and get those to Leslie as we go through the webinar, but if not, then we will get to it at the end. We will also be doing a raffle at the end of this webinar, and stick around, you'll get a discount. So without further ado, Leslie, why don't you give us a quick background on yourself and where you're at today?
Okay, so I am starting my new graduate residency program in the ER. I've also been working as a pediatric home health nurse. Nursing is my third degree. My first two were in biology and psychology, and I live in Dallas.
Fantastic. Well, again, we really do appreciate you joining today, and for our audience as well. There's a lot of people from all over the country and the world, so we thank you all for taking the time to join us. What I really wanted to do is, Leslie has a fantastic story and great advice to share. So I want to kind of rewind, go back a few years, and give you an opportunity to share your nursing journey. So let's go back to your first year, getting into nursing school. And as we all know, nursing school is overwhelming, right? So much information, so little time. So tell us a little bit about how you started that aspect of the academic discipline and rigor required to overcome the beast.
Right. So when I first started nursing school, like they tell you, nursing school is hard. Being my third degree, I thought, okay, I got this, no big deal. I know what I'm doing. I kind of got a good maybe study routine going on, but it was completely different. So something I had to do differently first is I'm all about goal setting and mapping things out. So I had to sit down, look at everything and lay it all out, and kind of just figure out, okay, what are my end goals for the end of this nursing school journey? Do I want to be just passing? Do I want to be the best? So I kind of just really lined that up for myself and always just had my goals somewhere visible.
And for you, where was that? Was that a notebook? Was that on a wall? You know, how did you actually?
I have a planner, I have a wall calendar, and I also use Google. So my Google Calendar is where I did my time blocking. So I worked throughout nursing school, so I did specific time blocks for lecture classes, clinical and skills, and then added in my study time and the times that I had to work also.
So you used the calendar pretty religiously.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So let's, I want to talk more about the organization, but maybe before we do, let's talk about learning. I know when I started medical school, I was ridiculously overwhelmed. I felt like, again, there's just so much information, crazy words, even the nomenclature, keeping track of that was difficult enough, yet you have to understand the nomenclature and the concepts and the topics and every little, it's a lot. So how did you know how to learn?
So I first started nursing school when I was in fundamentals. We had these thick PowerPoints, they were like 100 slides, and I rewrote every single slide for maybe the first 3 or 4 weeks of the course. And then I realized that it was taking hours and hours a day to even get through half of the PowerPoint. I was remembering some of the information, but when it came to the test, I didn't get to all of the information. So I really kind of had to learn to realize the way that I learn best when I see it and when I hear it. So I would replay the audio lectures and then try to write it all out, but it was just taking way too much time. So I had to go back through and reevaluate and look at my other resources like Pikmonic and see how I could use what I have available to me to learn better.
That's great. I think, again, we're taught to learn a lot of information, but we're not always taught how to learn. So being able to identify whether you're more visual, more auditory, more kinesthetic, whether, what works for you is so important. So being that I also was a very audio and visual learner, kind of was the impetus for Pikmonic. But for yourself, when did you start using Pikmonic? Tell us a little bit about how that kind of fit into the grand scheme of your journey.
Yeah, I started using Picmonic when we took our first med surg class and pharmacology together. So we were learning all new disease processes and also learning all new medications. And that's when I realized, okay, I don't have time to write out both of these. I'm kind of ADHD. So I kind of went and I had heard about Picmonic because my friend uses it for medical school. And she's like, just try it out. And Picmonic was a lifesaver, especially for pharmacology. I still to this day have issues remembering drugs, and I want to be like on it every single time, know exactly what I'm talking about. So learning pharmacology and especially med surg nursing, it is the foundation of your entire nursing career. So being able to go to Picmonic and use the different audio and visuals and kind of remember the silly names, that's what I was replaying in my head every single time I was testing.
Love that. So we probably have some people on the webinar today who've never even heard of Pikmonic, who really don't know a lot about it. How do you describe what Pikmonic even is?
So there are different, so what I did for each class, because I was in an accelerated program, I made playlists for different classes. There's also a way that you can go through and browse and look at the specific textbook that you're using in your nursing school class. And you can go through and just play them. There's 2 different formats that you can play them in. There's quizzes you can take. And then the way that it just revolves and kind of tells you a story, you can play it over and over again. And I also found myself just, when I was in my notes, kind of drawing arrows where Picmonic had the arrows. So just having the reiteration of what we learned in lecture was super helpful.
So that's actually a really good point. I want to go kind of 2 different directions with this. One is, so for those who might not understand Pikmonic, what it does is it's going to take all the important concepts that you need to know and all the little details, and it ties those little details to characters and puts those characters in a big picture with a story and an educational audio. So you watch like a 2 to 3 minute video on any topic. It could be a drug, a bug, a disease, and then you go and take the quiz. And that really is kind of a very efficient, bite-sized way to learn any topic that you're struggling with. Pharm being a great example, because pharmacology, you have to know so many contraindications or side effects, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, right? It's just, you just need to memorize it. And rote repetition is really, really hard. So the visuals can help. What was your favorite character? Do you have a favorite character?
Oh my gosh. I remember going through the preload and afterload. Was always a hard time for me, the cardiac heart. So that was my favorite because I always just saw it spurting out. So it's like, and then the aorta,
aorta.
So I was like, okay, that's helpful for me, especially also if you're just starting nursing school. Pathophysiology, that's a lot of information to remember as well. And that's on there.
That's great. Love it. Okay, and then the second part of that, so you did use it for pharm. Were there other sections between neuro or respiratory or other kind of body systems or areas? Tell me about where
so I used it for each body system. So kind of how med-surg works in nursing school or at my university, they broke it into 3 different sections. The first 2 were kind of more of the basics, and the third one was our critical care section. So with critical care, it was helpful I would go through the respiratory and neuro Pikmonics in my first 2 med-surg classes. And then when I went back for critical care, I already kind of had a sense of different respiratory emergencies and cardiac emergencies. So it was really helpful to have that familiar information and the familiar characters. And I'm like, okay, I remember this.
That's great. So one thing you said is that you used, the Pikmonic book feature. I don't think, again, a lot of people probably know what that is. Will you tell a little bit about what that is and how you used it?
Yeah, so at the top, there is a browse button, and you can go down to books and you can search the different books. You can go through the pages, and then as you're going through, it'll show you which Pikmonics are available for those pages or that page or group of pages. So especially like in your syllabus, when your instructors tell you, all right, we're testing through these chapters, maybe you waited to the last minute, because that was me sometimes. I was really busy. It was just easy to say, okay, I'm going through these 4 chapters. I'm going to go through, see what Pikmonics they have on these pages instead of reading the entire book and retaining 0 information.
That's great. Yeah. So so essentially there's, I don't know how many different, 30, 40, 50 different books that are really popular in different nursing programs, whether that's med surg, fundamentals, it doesn't matter. And those books are referenced in Picmonic, so that you can essentially say, I've got 30 pages I'm supposed to read tonight. Well, go find those 30 pages in Picmonic, watch the Picmonics.
Right.
So did you use, well, actually, before I go there, because there's a lot we need to talk about and not a ton of time. When using Pikmonic, what did you find just to be the most valuable? Or if there are students here who, again, might not have heard about it, is it something you recommend? Is it something you recommend just for NCLEX prep or using early on in the journey? Just kind of where
I would start, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would start using Pikmonic from day one, just remembering the information, because when you're trying to cram so many new things in your brain, you leave important stuff out. And when you're going through and searching through all these pages, all these lecture slides, and you're not really sure of what's important, because most time your instructors don't tell you, they're just like, hey, here's the information, figure it out. What I found was what I really needed to know was in the Pikmonics. So I used it for all of my classes and in NCLEX prep when I started running out of time and my test date was getting closer.
That's great. And did you use it on your computer or your phone more often?
I used it on my computer most of the time. I also used it on my phone when I was on break at work, just to get some last minute studying in, because I would work a couple shifts before a test, which I wouldn't recommend. But I would use it at work, listen to it on my drives to school, and just kind of hit play and listen through it and replay it in my head and listen out loud.
Love it. So you mentioned that you had several different jobs while going through nursing school in an honors or accelerated program. I mean, there's not even time as is. So tell us a little bit about staying organized, staying disciplined, what you did to track and keep, you mentioned the calendar, but share a little bit more about some of those things that you did.
Right. So when I first started school, I worked service industry. So I was a bartender at 2 different restaurants. And what I had to do was I would get my big wall calendar and I would write out everything that was already set in stone, non-negotiables. So I started with my school schedule, and then I would go in and fill in the days that I could work. And then from there, I would fill in study times. And instead of just writing, okay, well, I'm going to study for 2 hours today, I'm going to do my respiratory Pikmonics, I'm going to do 20 respiratory questions, and then I'm going to review the information in the book that I don't remember. So being really specific about what I was studying in my study time was helpful, rather than just saying, all right, I'm going to sit down and study for 2 hours. So being very detailed and focused, and that's where I used my planner and my Google Calendar. So I know, okay, 30 minutes ahead of time, in 30 minutes, I need to sit down and get focused. I already have a plan written out based on what we're tested on in the syllabus, and I know exactly what I'm doing when I sit down to study.
I love it. That's great. So being very, very specific about your days, the times that you're going to study, but not just the times and blocking it off, actually writing out what you're going to accomplish within those different blocks.
Mm-hmm. So I would start with the syllabus, and we tested on maybe 7 or 8 chapters every week, because I was in an accelerated program. So if I have 4 free days in between, I would schedule out those hours and it's just trial and error. So how long does it take me to really retain this information? What information do I think that I'm going to struggle with more? So I know that remembering everything about the heart was one of my weak points, and my medications was a weak point. So if we were going through cardiac emergencies and knowing those medications, I would focus on that and then get to all the rest of the information.
Did you feel there was a big shift in how you approached your studies first year versus second year, and especially going, kind of into second semester, starting to think about NCLEX and beyond?
Right. Yeah. So, like I said at first, I was the person in class who was vigorously typing every single word that the teacher said, and then going through, rewriting the lecture notes, took another pen, added in all of that information that the instructor said in class. And I was really the girl who was doing too much. I was doing way too much, and I would make great grades, but I was miserable, exhausted, and never slept. So just realizing how I learn best, and they tell you that all the time. You need to know your learning style. I
Right.
was like, I know that when I'm in skills class, for example, I like being shown what to do, or when I'm in lecture, I really remember information when I hear it. So I'm like, can I combine this in one sitting where I can see it and hear it at the same time?
Yeah, that's great. For NCLEX, was there any specific thing that you did in preparation or tools that you used, even outside of Pikmonic, that you recommend for the audience?
Yes. So my school used ATI testing. I think a lot of schools use that now. Kathy Parks on YouTube was my go-to. A lot of people also used Sarah Registered Nurse RN. If you
Great.
haven't heard of them, look them up on YouTube. And then for the bulk of my NCLEX studying for NCLEX, I feel personally, is you can't go through and reteach yourself all of the information that you think you can. Nursing school has prepared you for NCLEX. The hardest part was doing practice questions, knowing how to answer nursing school focus questions, especially select all that apply. So UWorld was really helpful to kind of get my brain going into like NCLEX mode.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
So, stepping back a little bit, before we get to questions, even though I do encourage anyone in the audience to feel free, I see a lot of comments coming in, but feel free to ask some questions, and we're gonna jump into that here real quick. But Leslie, to be able to work multiple jobs, go to school in an accelerated program, doing all you did, how did you stay sane? How did you
I
find
still had a social life. 100%. Yeah. I was the party planner. Everyone's always at my house because I'm a extroverted introvert. So I feed off of other people's energy, and then I kind of need to like retract back a little bit. Um, but nursing school does not have to consume your whole life. You'll be absolutely miserable if you let it. So just taking the time and not feeling guilty about taking time away from studying. Because I think like all of my friends noticed first semester when I was never around. At work, I was just really grumpy because I was never sleeping. And I fell into just the belief that, all right, you're in nursing school. It's going to be your whole life. Expect to never see your friends. But I kind of just bonded with people I went to school with and my nursing Instagram, my friends on there. Just like find people who are going through what you're going through right now, people you can talk to and vent about work, about school, and then just have fun.
Yeah. Did you take dedicated break days, or would you ever take like a Sunday completely off, or did you build it into your schedule, or was it more sporadic when you actually did take the time?
My first year of nursing school, it was more sporadic because I work service industry, so I was usually
Right.
working on the weekends.
Sure.
My second year, I started working in the ER as a tech, and I was PRN there, which lots of hospitals have
Right.
nurse extern positions. So you can sign up for PRN and work full time because still had to pay my bills. But I would try to make it that the days I went to class a half day, I
Mhm.
would also work. Or if I had class Monday, Tuesday, I would work Wednesday, Thursday, and then I would have Friday and Saturday off, and then kind of get back in the mode of school on Sundays.
Yeah. To that end, a lot of students we talk to, it's just really important to try and schedule. You talked about scheduling for studying, but also even scheduling time off.
Yeah.
So many of us just feel like, again, there's not enough time. I've got to do it. And we think that by continuing to go, we're going to learn more. But a lot of times it's not true. Our brain needs breaks. So going into your last semester of school, which was, earlier in 2020, curveball, COVID happened.
Surprise.
Shifts in structure. Do you have any thoughts or advice to share to students who, again, might be just entering a program, starting a program, school is chaotic, everything is maybe different than it was in a world of past. Do you have any thoughts or advice to share, just how to approach it, how to survive it?
Yeah, so I went into when COVID hit, we were in our immersion program. So it was our last clinicals, finally the clinical that we got to choose. I was really excited about. I was in the ER, and that has been my dream since day one. And we got pulled from clinicals. We were in our last class that was supposed to kind of prepare us for NCLEX, prepare us for graduation, help us with our resumes and cover letters and job interview stuff. And we were just kind of moved online and told to do practice questions and get ready for NCLEX. So I know myself and a lot of my cohort just felt deprived of the nursing experience. Like, we're supposed to be there in clinicals with our friends, doing hands-on work and learning really how to be a nurse. And then when we transferred to Zoom clinicals and using Swift River, which is like a virtual simulation, it kind of felt like, okay, well, I kind of lost confidence and am I going to be a good nurse when I come out of this? I'm really worried. But I think just being adaptable and resilient. And when I was in it, I just felt like, well, we're still in it, but I just felt like, okay, well, this is a bummer. But in nursing, which working in the hospital kind of helped me realize that everyone's going through changes right now and just trying to make the best of the situation that we're in. They're still giving us the information, but being adaptable and learning what other resources you can use to learn best. I know a lot of people that I still tutor online, they do group tutoring with Zoom. So then that way you're learning with other people, and you still get to talk to your friends, or even just like Zoom happy hours. Just trying to find that community however you can.
That's great. Well, fantastic. So what I want to do for the sake of time is we're going to jump over and answer audience questions for a little bit. So I'm going to rapid fire questions at you from our audience. And again, feel free to continue to write those in. Leslie, at what part of nursing school did you begin to use Pikmonic? I think you already answered this, but.
Yes, it was Med-Surg and Pharmacology, which was my second core nursing class.
And when should they start using it?
ASAP, right now. Yeah. If you're just thinking about going to nursing school, I know a lot of my friends, I feel like I have more Instagram friends than real friends. A lot of my friends on Instagram, they are going into a nursing program soon and they're asking, what can I do? I'm like, get started now. This is the easiest way without buying a bunch of books that you don't know if you're going to use. Just review the information and make yourself familiar with the terminology.
Which information?
Just like pathoterminology. You can start learning drugs with Pikmonics. You can do really anything.
Got it. Excellent. Okay. There were a few people that were commenting on their favorite characters. There was a question about, does Pikmonic have WK books, which is Walters Kluwer and a lot of the Lippincott books, and it does.
Yeah.
So if you go into, and again, anyone can sign up for Pikmonic for free. You get access to one Pikmonic a day. If you subscribe, you get access to over 1,100 Pikmonics for nursing, which covers 10,000 plus facts and quiz questions. There's a lot of information in there.
Your nursing diagnoses are in there. That's important.
Yeah, some of those. Leslie, what shirt are you wearing? Question from the audience.
Serotonin, happy AF.
And where did you get that shirt?
Pikmonic.
So Pikmonic actually does have a store with some different swag items for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, my socks are on the way.
Love it, love it. All right, next question. All right, Leslie, you're brilliant. I pretty much do everything you mentioned except time my schedules with specific subjects and topics. So thank you. And again, I agree, being really specific about what those goals are, that's fantastic. Can you repeat the YouTube videos that helped you throughout nursing school? So what were the two different ones we mentioned?
Kathy Parks for ATI, for sure. And then Sarah, registered nurse RN. And I think Yeah,
Someone
if they're a registered nurse RN. So if you search Kathy Parks, it's Parkes, or Sarah Registered Nurse RN on YouTube, like you'll see all of their playlists.
So someone had written on a comment, it's registerednursern.com too, I think is her website. So great resources, a lot of fantastic videos and content available through there. What kind of studying did you do in the days right before the test to try and make yourself feel prepared and ready?
Okay, so I did two different things. One was helpful, one was not. So I used to go in the morning to Starbucks at an ungodly hour, whichever one was open first. And we would just like rapid fire quiz each other. And I would get super anxious and I would still do fine, but I was just like worked up a lot until I kind of, towards the end of nursing school, I noticed that I was like getting anxious more often, not being able to stay focused. So instead, slept in, woke up, had my coffee, had breakfast, and I say affirmations out loud in the mirror. So mine are, I'm smart, I'm confident, I'm not anxious, I'm able to recall information easily, and I'm excited to show what I know.
That's good. Another comment, I'm in mental health this semester and we'll have our first exam next week. How did you study for this class? What was your go-to? We were all a bit nervous.
Yes, so mental health is focused a lot on nursing interventions, and it's not usually the nursing interventions that you think that they would be. So I would kind of try to push aside your med-surg diagnosis and first interventions. Mental health is a lot about safety and also, once again, pharmacology, knowing your drugs, knowing the side effects, knowing that your MAOIs, you can't have tyramine with them, and just how to de-escalate a patient. Mental health was really hard for me too.
Yeah, it is. It's tough.
Yeah.
How many Pikmonics did you cover a day on average?
So I didn't do them daily. So I had my specific work days and I had my specific study days. On my study days, I would split my time between reviewing information that our instructor told us was going to be on a test. So I would have like 8 or 9 hours of study time, which break it up into blocks, not all back to back. But I would go back and forth. I can only focus for about an hour and a half at a time. So Pikmonics, what did I get wrong? Go back, look at the book. Practice questions that our instructors gave us. Go back, look at the book, review what I got wrong, and just kind of go from there and see where I was learning the most.
That's great. Someone's asking, is Picmonic an app? How would I be able to get access? We will have both an iOS and an Android app. Yeah. So just go and download it and you can register from there or just on the web. Another comment or question, is it true what they say about nurses eating their young? When working clinics, what should I expect?
Oh, that is a topic that makes me really sad because honestly, yes, some nurses do, but it is not all nurses. ER nursing and ICU can be pretty cutthroat, but there are always nurses there, at least one nurse who is willing to take you under their wing and kind of like protect you, which my preceptor is doing for me right now. And I have worked there for 2 years now. But just kind of taking a different approach to it instead of walking in every day being like, oh my gosh, she doesn't like me, or the doctor is going to yell at me, or they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a baby nurse. Just, hey, I'm here to learn. I'm going to ask questions because it's safer for my patients. And I'm going to do the best I can and go home.
So, we're almost at the 30 minutes, half past the hour. I am going to just tell everyone that's present today, we are recording this webinar. We will make it available after. So if you have to drop off, feel free to do so. I'm going to try and keep Leslie on for a few more minutes because we're getting a lot of great questions coming in and I'd love to give her an opportunity to answer. So have you ever struggled with the thought of feeling like you weren't capable enough of being a nurse? How did you stay motivated? It's a really good question, really hard.
Yeah, because some days I still feel like that. Like I'm not moving fast enough. Like I don't know the information. But in nursing school, I feel like I felt more confident about being a nurse when I was in nursing school than when I got out. But once again, I am very into like mindset and goal setting and like centering yourself. So before going into work, just brain dumping everything, knowing that you're not going to be perfect. No one was perfect when they first started. And if they try to tell you they were, it's not true.
Right.
But we're humans too. Like that's just what I tell myself. We are not unflawed, just like magical unicorns. There are going to be things that you don't know and times that you mess up, but just take it and learn from it.
Part of it. It's all learning experiences. All right. Next question. Which activities, clubs, organizations were you involved with while in school? And are there any healthcare experiences do you recommend that I look into?
So I was the vice president of community outreach for NSNA, Student Nurses Association. I helped put on kind of like hands-on skills for high school students at one of the hospitals that's in Dallas. I did vaccine clinics. I know a lot of our clinical instructors would email us when there were hands-on opportunities available. So I did vaccine clinics after we were checked off on vaccines. Other organizations, Sigma Theta Tau is an honors organization, but I think your school will let you know if you qualify for that. But I went to a pretty small school, so we didn't have a bunch of activities and stuff to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting involved in general, I think it broadens your perspectives, gives you different real world experience
and they love to see that on applications. We were required to do volunteer hours. I also went to Argentina. I can't believe I forgot that.
That's awesome. As part of a program, a healthcare.
Yeah. So I was in the global public health program. I went to Argentina, met some of my best friends, and it was during our public health term. And we were there doing a lot of patient teaching, basic healthcare education. You never think how people aren't taught to brush their teeth or check their blood sugar or teach them even what diabetes is. So that absolutely changed my life.
It's great. It sounds like a wonderful place to go visit.
Yeah.
Maybe not right now.
I could talk for hours about it.
I like this. Where do you currently work now? But even more important, what are some of your professional, personal goals as a nurse?
Right now, so I do pediatric home health, and my ER nurse residency is going full time next week. So I'll have to go PRN.
Uh-oh. I don't know if or you're freezing. I apologize if.
So class.
We might be having some technical internet issues. I think it just stalled out for a minute, but maybe you're back. You're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Awesome. Sorry.
No, it's no problem.
But I want to be a clinical instructor. I want to be a flight nurse, and I'm prematurely studying for my CEN, which is your Certified Emergency Nurses, and your TNCC, which is your trauma course.
Off he goes. You're a go-getter. Love it. Love it. Affirmations are everything. I'm just reading through some more of these comments. Someone says, I also have ADHD, and I feel like I can never remember anything I'm learning. How do you combat that?
That's me.
Me too.
Honestly, sometimes you just have to take more time than other people do to study, which like sometimes was like kind of a downer because people would make fun of me. But do what you have to for your learning styles. And like I said, if you learn better with re-listening to things, just play something on repeat. Something I also did was I would teach myself or pretend I was teaching someone else, record myself, and play it in the car. Because if you can teach someone, you know the information.
That's great. And I'm just checking with my people to make sure we can continue to keep going for a few minutes. Are you familiar, Leslie, with the Pomodoro Technique?
Yeah, that's what I use.
Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about that with time management, as they might not be familiar?
Yeah, so the Pomodoro Technique, you set your focus time and your break time. I would go for 30 or 45 minutes of focus time. I had to turn off my distractions on my laptop, my phone, my iPad, And I kept like a little Post-it note next to me because my brain is always going, and I would just jot down things that I wanted to do. So I remembered I needed to do the laundry. So I would just write it down and keep going. Your 10-minute break is a break, and then you start over again. So I started with 30 minutes of focus time, 10 minutes of break time, and then I would work my way up to like 45 minutes of focus time and 10 minutes of break time, or 15. And then after like 2 or 3 cycles of that, I would take a long break for 45 minutes to an hour.
That's fantastic. So key point being, take breaks. You know, you need to interrupt some of your study time, give the brain a break. Even if it's 10, 15 minutes, those short interruptions can actually be really good. But there are tools that you can use, whether it's an internet, website,
I
or an
think it's like
app.
tomatotimer.com
Yeah,
is one of them.
there's a few of them, but
Yeah.
just look up Pomodoro. There's apps that you can use, or
There's a
websites you can
forest
use.
app on your phone. That's a good one too.
Yeah, go build some trees or build a forest. But the key is really set your focus time, and don't interrupt yourself with Instagram. Which, by the way, just in case they're not following you, what's the handle they should be following, Miss Leslie?
I am lesliejackson.rn on Instagram. And if you have any questions, you can send them there also. I will definitely get back to you.
And there are going to be more questions than we're able to answer today, and we'll answer a few more, but just in case, you guys can always follow up with Leslie on the side. So do you feel like you missed out on a lot of nursing school because of COVID?
We were lucky to have it towards the end, but we did miss our graduation. We didn't have a pinning ceremony. And I think that was like the biggest hit that we took. It was like, man, we've gone through this whole program and we've been in it together. And it was kind of a bummer, like not having that huge celebration that we were looking forward to.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Is there anything else, just as far as maybe getting clinical experience? Because there's a couple of different questions around that,
Yeah.
Either you didn't get in school, or that maybe you got through some of the other activities you did that you felt were really beneficial?
If you can, which a lot of people don't work in nursing school, I totally understand. But nurse tech positions or nurse extern positions, or even if you can find a PRN, patient care technician, that would be ideal. I would say to find a PRN or part-time job versus full-time and go like jump in head first. Because with part-time, you can ask for more hours, pick up an extra shift. I promise there's availability. So I worked PRN, which is only like 16 hours required every 2 weeks, and I still did full-time every week. I just picked up extra. But if you're just starting and you want to get that experience, I would definitely try to get into a hospital if you can, or a clinic, because they write amazing recommendation letters. It looks great because you're in the environment. And I got hired at the ER that I worked at.
Just fantastic. And there was also a question about how you got the emergency, not the residency, but the internship. Was it through a connection, a friend, or you just go and you asked?
So if you finished my specific hospital, if you finished your fundamentals in your first clinical rotation, you can apply to be a nurse extern. Especially places like the ER. Our ICU doesn't specifically have techs, but other bigger hospitals do. But if you finish your first clinical, I would look for those nurse extern or nursing student positions. So I would look for positions specifically for students. That way you're able to get into the ER if that's what you want without experience.
Fantastic. So there's 2 more questions that I'm going to ask based on what the users have sent in today. Number 1 is maintaining focus at home. So we talked about Pomodoro effect and keeping organized, but is there anything else that you did to maintain focus while at home, given the unlimited distractions?
Yeah. So I like having a window nearby, but I can't face the window because I'll stare at it all day. But also I like crossing things off my to-do list. So having a set list of things to do, but also not overwhelming yourself. So I would pick like your top 3 things that you want to get done today, non-negotiables, mark those off, and anything else you have time for is extra.
It's amazing. So one last question, and then we've also gotten a request for you to potentially summarize kind of your top 5 tips again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to close out the rest of the webinar with everyone, and we're going to draw a raffle winner. We're going to tell them how they can get access to a discount. And then we're going to see if you can kind of re-summarize your top 5. Okay. So the last question for you was about are the Pikmonics and some of the content within them relevant to what you're actually being taught in class? And if there's any discrepancies between those, are you still confident, let's say, going into the NCLEX that you actually learned the important info? I think it's a great question.
Absolutely. I think if there are any discrepancies, especially, so the way that I think of NCLEX is it is a national exam, it's a board test. Everyone who's gone to nursing school is going to take this test, so you need to know the basics, like what's going to kill your patient, what drugs are super important, because we don't all have the same lecture instructors. So just knowing the basics of what is important, whether it's drugs, nursing interventions, nursing diagnosis, potential complications, was what helped me kind of get my head around NCLEX, because I was like, well, maybe my teacher didn't teach a lot about this, but just kind of reviewing just like broad information for NCLEX, if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered it right.
There is no right or wrong.
Okay.
You know, I think that, again, every school teaches differently. Every educator teaches differently, and the information, the books. So, you know, Pikmonic has tried to standardize the most important information across the board. But you can also customize them. You can add your own facts. You can actually add characters to the images and do a lot of things. So if you feel like there's something missing, you can actually edit or customize Pikmonics within the system. So Leslie, before I give you a chance to kind of re-summarize your 5 tips for everyone, I do want to let everyone know that you have graciously hooked them up with a 40% off discount if they choose to subscribe to Pikmonic in the next 24 hours, and everyone who did RSVP to the webinar will be getting an email within the next hour or so that will have a link to that discount, as well as a link to the recording that should follow. So again, thank you so much. To close it out, why don't you give us your top 5 tips or pieces of advice for nursing students?
All right, so again, with the end in mind, know your goals, know where you want to go. Make sure you know your learning style. If not, explore a couple different learning styles and see when you feel the most confident about the information. 3, definitely keep a schedule, work smarter, not harder, and then also be adaptable, resilient, flexible, and know that you can do this, be confident.
That's awesome. Well, to everyone who joined us today, thank you all so much. You can always follow Leslie on our Instagram. Leslie, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck in the rest of your journey. And for everyone else, be safe out there. We love you guys. Until next time, signing off.
Bye.